So the average readability grade level of the average American citizen is the 8th grade level. And so I'm doing this topic specifically because I had a bunch of friends after November 6th come up to me asking if they voted correctly for Prop 6, and that's to repeal the Tax Act. They voted yes. And for some reason, they didn't understand what the word repel meant, or they just didn't understand it at all, and so they voted incorrectly, or they just left it blank. And so, and I did agree somewhat with other measures where some of them even I couldn't understand. And so we as Americans vote, and we will continue to vote in the future. And so I'm sure all of us have been in the position or know of somebody that has been stuck on a sentence, especially on a voting measure. And so if we started rewriting ballots to plain language, we would be able to understand it at the average American reading level, and then as a result, we would be able to vote as we intended. I would first discuss the ballots readability are too high for the average American citizen, how we should revert the ballots to plain language, and the result would be we would vote as we intended. And so first I would discuss the readability ballots are too high for the average American citizen. And so according to Riley and others, Justice Systems Journal 2010, they talk about education as a big factor when it comes to voting. The higher your education, the more you research the props and the measures. And somebody that has lower education they're either doing something else, so like working 2 jobs, and they're too busy trying to provide for their own life that they won't research. And so basically what ends up happening is called roll-off, where they go to vote, they don't understand it, or just one word tricks them off, and they just end up not voting, and that's called the roll-off. And so that's one major problem when it comes to the readability of the ballots are too high for the average citizen, especially for somebody that has lower education. Another one would be, according to Riley and others, Political Research Quarterly 2011, they took a survey out in the state of Georgia, and the average citizen there also rated at 8th grade level. And at the time of that survey, the voting that happened there, they made an algorithm to see the readability of all the measures, and it averaged out to the 22nd grade level. And so if everybody's at 8 is the average, and the average of the ballot was 22, it's almost implausible for the public to understand it. And now that we know what the problem is, we should first understand what is too difficult for the public to understand, and how to rewrite the ballots to make it as simple as possible. And so if we go back to plain language, according to Melati, State Politics and Policy Quarterly 2015, they did a survey of, the state was disclosed, and basically they took the measures of the entire state, counting counties and everything, and it came up to being 600 measures in total, and they averaged out to be, the reading level of those measures to be 14, and that's the average. So meaning one measure from a certain county could have been at the level of 30 years of education, where the other one could be at 8, and so everything's just, that's an example of the readability level is not set currently. And so the writers, it's up to the writers to put it as they want. And according to Quintenberry and others, the New York Times 2012, they write how the ballot writers could write the ballots to make it a lot simpler for others, and that's to use simple words, make sentences stand out, shorter sentences, say what would happen, use action verbs, and just not hide information with other words, and remove most of the jargon possible. And now that we know how to solve it, the results speak for themselves, where people will be able to vote as they intended. And so it was no author. The Center of Civic Design 2014 says they did a survey where they made a plain language ballot, and they gave it to a group of people, and basically the result was that the voters made less mistakes. They ended up voting as how they intended, and what they used different was they removed all the jargon possible. They used simple words. They used action words. They spoke in the positive, and so it's easier to remove something than to add something for that's most people understand. And that was just one of the results possible. Another result would be according to McNamara and CSL 2012. Basically what he did, he wrote two sentences. They mean exactly the same. They're right here. I'll read them out for you guys. If the location of the land is in a state other than the state in which the agency's jurisdiction is located, the agency's justification of anticipated benefits from the acquisition will be subject to greater scrutiny. The same sentence, just written in plain language, is when an agency wants to buy land in a different state, its reasons for the purchase would be studied very thoroughly. I myself never understood the very first one. When I first read it, I was completely thrown off, and then when I read that, I almost like wanted to punch the computer of like how simple it could have actually been written over that. And the readability level of the first one is 19.7, which is average, which is it rounds out to 20, and so that's a lot of years. That's probably like master's degree level. And then this is at 9.4, which is freshman year of high school basically. And so this also just shows how much easier it could be and how easy for everybody in the world just to be able to go to the poll place and just read something like that and be able to understand it right off the bat. And now you know how much a ballot written in plain language can do. And so I discussed the readability of the ballots are too high for the average citizen, how we should revert back to plain language for the ballots, and the result would be we would vote as we intended. And so we as Americans vote, and in the future we continue to vote. And we all know somebody or have been in a position that we weren't able to understand a certain sentence, especially on a voting measure. And so if we rewrite the ballots in plain language, we would be able to write it in the average American citizen readability level. As a result, we would be able to vote as we intended. And for the call to action is ballotready.org. Currently, nobody could really do anything about the readability. It's a federal regulation. And so for now, until there is a grade level that is set, you could go here and they'll give you all the information you need for your ballot, and it's mobile ready, so you could take it with you to a poll place. Thank you.